that were able to keep things going without the
Yes.
federal government having to come on in and decide that they need to seize the distribution system to ensure that it all works. Because then we'd be truly screwed.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely, no
definitely.
question.
See, I think that's a big part of it is preparation. Everyone knows this stuff's coming. We got to prepare. And another thing
Right.
in regard to that is the fear that's out there. I know that there's a lot of people out there that are fearful, that are having anxiety, that are really worried about this. But the one thing that everyone needs to keep in mind is this: if we did not have a collapse, if we did not have a revolution of some sort, if these terrible, terrible things did not occur at some point, nothing would ever change. So this is a necessary evil. And just keep that in mind. It might be fearful for now, but it's necessary. If we're ever going to change and evolve, we need this to happen.
Yeah, and I would actually take the word evil off of it. Let's just look at it as a challenge, right?
Yes.
And here's the way of it is from the martial arts perspective. The ordinary person sees everything that comes into their life as either a curse or a blessing. And so they're constantly jerked back and forth in an emotional state between euphoria and depression by their very daily activities that they encounter. And so if you just twist your mind a little bit and say everything, including blessings, but as well as curses, are really a challenge, and that my goal is to challenge myself to deal with these with equanimity and an even emotional state, regardless of what the circumstances are, then we can all get along a whole lot better without having to put the energy into that back and forth on the, oh, it's good for me, it's bad for me kind of a deal. It also eliminates the issue of fear. Yes, you will have a physical body reaction when something is startling, but your mind will be pre-programmed to respond appropriately because you will have eliminated this whole idea that this is a curse upon you suddenly, so to speak.
Yeah.
But at this point, the one other thing, or two other things really that need to be considered in our dollar collapse, and especially relative to how the food's been going and the climate change issues here, is that it won't be ubiquitous. So not everybody is going to have the same level of discomfort relative to how the dollar crashes. I was speaking with someone the other day, and we were making some comparisons and some analyses. And for instance, there are some certain conclusions we can come to. That California is going to do reasonably okay insofar as vegetables, a breadbasket kind of thing. So depending on what is grown in your area, you may find that you are less impacted than in other spots of the country.
Oh, yeah.
So, for instance, it's actually good to be in New Jersey, where they have a great deal of diversity in the farms, and bad to be in Kansas and the other square states in the middle, where they're more monoculture,
And
because they're going to have to bust up.
I'm in the middle of Kansas. I'm just about dead center of the geographical United States.
Well, there you go then. And driving mile after mile after mile of corn, there's not a whole lot of tomatoes and potatoes and other things growing in that corn.
Yep. Yeah. Well, even the
So-
farmers out here are having a really rough time right now.
Oh, I know. No one in the food industry is making money at the farmer level. That's absolutely totally understood here. Washington is a great dairy state, or used to be, and we've got dairies that are folding, and some of these dairies have, a 30 and 40 and 50 year history here, and they are just not able to make money at all.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of it has to do with the dollar itself. And the currency is a terrible thing to have it monkeyed with, because it robs people in favor of the rich. Bear in mind, inflation actually benefits the rich greatly, but it robs everybody of that for which they work, which is their joy in life, their
Yes.
potential for retirement, the idea that they're going to be able to spend a little bit of money on, say, an extra nice Beaujolais with dinner, or to take their partner out for a nice dinner, something along these lines, and get that joy back into their lives. That was really the part that struck me in reading all the history of the previous depression in this country, as well as some of the impacts of the sterling depression in Britain, was the tone that took over, because inflation ate you alive. You could no longer think about the allocation of resources towards those things that were fitting to the soul. You had to constantly work on merely maintaining the body. And unfortunately, we're going to go into a period of time that may last 18 or 20 months here in this country, where that's going to be our main primary focus as the rest of this crud starts swirling around us. So we're about to hit I think 10, 1925, in my way of thinking, marks the real start of the slide, so to speak. That from that point on, events are likely to seem as though they're running slightly ahead of our ability to control them or even catch up to them. There will be a certain amount of anxiety just about daily event volume from what we see in our data.
Yeah, well, I know the anxiety levels are pretty high out there. I can see it in all places on the net, just talking to people. People that you never would have expected were awake and aware about these things are now starting to prepare. So it's definitely something is happening. I just hope everybody out there remembers that when this stuff does occur, we need to work together because it's us versus them, and their system's going
also
down.
There's billions of us, so we will win. It's just a matter of what we've got to go through to see that day.
That's right. Like somebody here in chat said, fighting, looting, killing, really bad stuff. That's exactly the point. We need to maintain our composure. We need to work together in groups, and we need to help each other through this, because when it's all said and done, we are going to be the ones that inherit what's left.
Correct. But at the same time, let's also look at this immense challenge ahead of us as a marvelous opportunity to reinvent ourselves and our place in the world. I, for instance, will applaud the collapse of the Anglo-American Empire and the defeat of the monarchist, and I will say to myself, what can I do to make the America that I live in, the United States of America, a benefit to the populace of this planet, instead of tacit support of one of the greater evils on the planet? And I would agree with the use of evil in that term.
Yeah. So now, Clif, I got a question for you real quick. We're already running at about 15 till the hour. Are you going to be able to stay on a little longer, or are you going to need to
Sure. I'm not constrained. We'll just keep going, guys.
Okay, great, because I really don't want to rob everybody of the opportunity. I know there were a lot of people that were anxious about hearing what you have to say, and
sure.
So we'd like to...
No problem at all. We'll just keep going until the voice gives out or the Skype guys come and hack us again.
Oh, those bastards. So, well, let's change gears a little bit here now. I'm seeing just a lot of different subjects coming through the chat that people are asking about.
We covered the financial collapse. We covered a little bit of the preparations. I think at this point in time, if you don't know that you need to prepare for what's coming, then
yeah, it's too late.
What can we tell you? I mean, we've been preaching the same song and dance now for
exactly
how many years?
Yes, but now we got to get real serious about also, we've all prepared, but now we need to start doing what we can to prepare and put stuff away for those of our idiot relatives that'll come and say, hey, what's going on later,
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's cover a little bit about the 15% DNA, what exactly that means. Are people changing on a conscious level overall? Is this a genetic thing? What is the UFO ET involvement? And how does that relate with the government and the powers that be?
Okay, let me, one last thing I need to say about the currency collapse before we get too far off.
Okay. Because
I've actually had a number of questions about it. If I'm correct, and there is this tension period, and then we get into the currency collapse itself, be advised that it probably does not aid you to try and make a mortgage payment under those circumstances, or to pay your other bills. There may be issues with mail delivery and so on. And I'm not saying don't plan on never paying bills after that point, but I am saying that if you're of strapped resources and you see the economic system breaking down all around you and you're seeing it on the daily news, probably the thing to do would be to maybe see if you couldn't put some of that money towards food, and with the expectation you'll have to make your mortgage payment later when stuff sort of straightens out, maybe. And that's the issue, is maybe. In Argentina, the collapse rate was such that there was a bond crisis. 2 months later, the currency collapsed. There was social infrastructure collapse. They lost their first president. They had like 6 or 7 presidents over the course of 6 or 8 weeks. But as soon as they had the bond crisis moved into the currency collapse, from that point on, people essentially stopped making mortgage payments to extra local authority. In other words, if you had a landlord, you'd still try and pay them. But in the history of Argentina's collapse, they stopped shipping off money to IMF and this kind of stuff during that period of time. I suspect we'll also get to that point. Now, and it's nothing I can say, well, today, don't make your mortgage payment. But I'm saying you probably are going to be able to figure it out just by what's going on relative to what the mainstream media shows you and what you see happening around you.
Yeah, I think the focus is going to be on day-to-day survival for that period of time.
I agree, but there will be a whole lot of people that will feel compelled to try and live life as normal, in the sense that, you know, a budget, allocating their mortgage, making the payment, trying to get it into the mail, and so on. And during this period of time, and in this chaos, yes, it could be used as an excuse or a trigger to cause foreclosures, but we're talking about something that's happening en masse to us all, and under those circumstances, conditions truly change and the rules truly change. For instance, in the time of the bank holidays and so forth in the 30s, there were explicit rules about what the post office would and wouldn't carry in terms of what they could ship and what they couldn't. And it simply related to trying to get some level of business as usual going in their decaying system. And that's what we're in now, is a system that is dying of its own. So we can leave that subject there and just go from that point on. And let's jump back to the 15%er guys.
Alrighty.
I just have one little question quick before we go into the 15%er. Just because I've been seeing a lot of this on the media lately, and the rolling out of the H1N1 vaccination, and you know they're leaning towards the first week of November, and I'm up here in Canada, and we're looking at first week in November. I think they're trying to push the rollout also as soon as possible in the States. What are your, I don't know, do you have any comments on that, or is this, I'm not worried about it.
That's their next tactic in the population reduction.
Right.
It's really blatant in Canada, because the Crown has decided that the First Nations people will be the brunt of another extinction attempt, and they've already started poisoning the people with Tamiflu, and the Tamiflu is good. That's the issue. It's actually poisoning them and doing its job. It is not a good substance, and we've had all kinds of reports from my friends in the Salish that the First Nations that have already accepted the Tamiflu, they've got hundreds of individuals sick, and other villages that are to be Tamiflu'd are already receiving body bags. What's that all about? So this tells me that indeed the whole let's destroy as much of humanity as we can and remain with ourselves on top population reduction meme is a reality. And I shouldn't be surprised, because the powers that be have always used disease to get rid of population they don't like. Smallpox in South America, and blankets from the Jesuits. The Jesuits used smallpox and other disease here in the U.S., again on blankets to the indigenous population. So it's like we all got to start thinking of ourselves now as indigenous population, or Indians, or First People, however you want to phrase it. And them white guys, hey, I wouldn't take their blankets. You know, it's a little risky. So it strikes me as one of those things that if you don't do the research, you're likely to go get the shot. There will be severe consequences, I'm quite sure.
Have you seen that? There's a video floating around on YouTube about a lady that is now partly paralyzed and having seizures and stuff from taking one of those vaccines. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that, but that would strike me as perfectly sound, because that's the Guillain-Barré syndrome that arose the last time they tried this. Yeah. And what everyone needs to understand is that they're actually giving you proteins from swine, and swine proteins in many cases are very similar to native human proteins, and your body is going to look at these proteins as an infection point and start attacking its own system as a result of this introduction of the swine. And we really have to understand this, that this is not a good thing. And then with the other crud they're putting in there, the thimerosal and some of the other stuff, and I was shocked. I mean, I've read list of ingredients for some of the vaccines and the Tamiflu kind of stuff that have aspartame in there. Why does it need a sweetener? Has the bacteria got a sweet tooth?
Yeah, they like to be sneaky with the way they slip us stuff, you know.
It is quite terrible, yes. But you know, this is one of those things where anybody pops up and asks, I'm going to say you'd be a fool. In my opinion, you'd be a fool to take any of the vaccines. And actually, I can demonstrate statistics